Campside Media.
Hey, Campside listeners, welcome back to Inside the Tent, our show where we go behind the microphone on our favorite podcasts and talk to the people who brought them to life. I'm Adam Hoff, one of the co-founders at Campside, and today I'm talking to Vanessa about Murder at Lululemon, a mini-series on her show Infamous. If you want more exclusive content or behind-the-scenes anecdotes from our shows, make sure to go to joincampside.com to become a free member of the Campside community. That's joincampside.com. Now here's my interview with Vanessa. All right, let's go into the very brief past here and discuss your mini-series, Murder at Lululemon. Very gripping story, I have to say. And it's a four-parter, if I remember correctly, right? 4 parts. And it centers on a rather violent killing that reads, at least to me, when I listen to it, as very mysterious. And then it suddenly becomes very clear what happened. And we can get into all that. I think I have questions for you around storytelling choices vis-a-vis investigation and how that unfolded. But I was really drawn to this story and I wanted to talk to you about it Inside the Tent because it has this company culture element with the Lululemon of it all. And in the podcast, it sort of flits around the edges of the story and it's almost like context for the key characters. But it seemed clear to me that that's a big part of what drew you into this was the weirdness, almost, I guess you could say, of Lululemon. So just tell the listeners about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that athleisure has really changed American lives. Like, it's undeniable. There's so many ways the dominance of the aesthetic has, particularly in upper middle class women's lives, made a change. There's also something almost S&M-ish about the more tight-fitting stuff, the way it's like these thick disciplinary straps that come over your shoulders and little peekaboo enclosures on, your thighs on the black leggings that everybody has. And I'm just somebody who has been drawn to writing about fashion and the way the people who create that fashion have a ideological and aesthetic system that they're trying to bring to bear on the public. That's been something that's always fascinated me. So even though you could say Lululemon, whatever, is that a mall brand? The fact is it's actually done a lot more than Prada over the last 15 years to create change in people's lives. So that was the first sort of big thing that drew me in was somebody needs to take this on in a serious way. But then when you look into the culture of Lululemon, it's straight bananas.
I've heard Lululemon compared to peak Steve Jobs Apple in one breath, where it's just oh man, people just love this product. They love the culture that spins off that product. And it's just this rah thing, almost like the movie Air, where Nike was finding its slogans and its culture. But then I've also heard people basically compare it to Herbalife and almost imply it's an MLM, So which do you, is it both somehow? Is it when you say it's bananas behind the scene? I think a lot of people could probably pull that larger idea of, okay, there's an ethos and there's a way we all want to live. We want to be active and we're going to wear this kind of active clothing. But then you're suggesting something different, right?
One of my favorite shows is Enlightened. And the idea of corporation like that's set in a really mellow part of America where everybody's just hanging out, man, doing their gardening, or in this case, in Vancouver, also snowboarding and hiking and blah, 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 blah. And yet you have this incredibly rigid corporate culture in the middle of it is just such a fascinating part of late stage capitalist America and one of the great ways to live. And I feel that's what Lululemon is. It was started by Chip Wilson, who was from Vancouver, and he had a company that did really well with technical athletic wear. So he had an understanding of materials. And when he got a bunch of money from that company and then he was just getting into yoga, hanging out, he was wait a second, I could make yoga pants out of this and it would actually be the perfect thing to do yoga in, which it is, because yoga is a sport. And it also would make everybody's butts look incredible, which is what most women are looking for in a pair of leggings. So I can bring this to the market. And by the way, I have gotten into a bunch of woo-woo stuff. And I want to make clear that if you're going to be part of this company making American women's butts look good for $118 a pop, you also are going to follow my ideas about goal setting. You're going to follow my ideas about what a productive life is, about even something like you will not be allowed to come late to a meeting because that means that you're out of integrity. I would rather that I spend a bunch of money sending you to go do yoga classes and enjoy your vacations. And that's what like Lululemon is known for. It's like an incredible suite of perks, right? But if you are 5 seconds late to this meeting, you got to answer for that. I do think everybody who works at a job knows like you got to impress the boss, right? And so in that way, they were doing that. And one of the things that Chip did is he paid for people to go to this expensive like group consciousness raising weekend seminar for them to get to know themselves better. And that was something that you could wonder, like, how many of these people really wanted to do it? How many people did it because Chip was really into it? But I actually went to the seminar myself and wrote about it, amazingly enough, right before the World Trade Center fell. So I'm definitely dating myself because I was already a working professional, although a young one. And it took place in the World Trade Center, in One World Trade. And, you know, I just went in there on a weekend. I remember it being totally silent. There was this massive subterranean mall in the World Trade Center. I remember going down there and like, getting my coffee or whatever, and then going up and sitting in this room for literally 12 hours. And part of the seminar was you weren't supposed to get up to go to the bathroom. That was like a big thing because you might miss something. They said you may get the results if you go to the bathroom and leave this room, but you don't have any right to expect it, which is sort of a crazy way of putting it.
You might accidentally still have it all work out, but there's no guarantee unless you do every second.
You may or may not be able to change your life. But it was about changing your life. It was like, hey, you've come here for this weekend, and we will change your life if you, again, follow our rules. So there's a lot of like rule setting in Lululemon. And one of the things that I thought was really amazing about it, considering our contemporary culture around trauma and sharing trauma, is that this seminar was very much about telling your story. And by which I mean, I'm an only child. My parents are around, so I don't have anybody to take care of me. So I feel really abandoned, and I'm confused, and I'm looking for love in all the wrong places. And you would get up in front of these 200 strangers who were also there for the weekend, and you would share your story. And then they would say to you, but that's just your story. That's not real. That doesn't exist. This chair is real. Like, your ability to change your life is real. You can be anyone you want to be the minute you walk out this door, as long as you accept that you are not the sum of that, quote unquote, trauma or experience or whatever. So in terms of the Lululemon murder, which happened in Bethesda with 2 employees of Lululemon, both of these women were super upwardly mobile, gorgeous, 20-something. One of them had multiple master's degrees. The other one had been like a VIP concierge in a 5-star hotel for the Jonas Brothers, who were recently guests. And they were both part of that Lululemon idea and that culture, and the idea of when I come into work, people are going to say to me, what's your 5-year goal? How are you actually reaching that goal today? I want you to write these goals on a piece of paper. We're going to put them on a wall, right? And the culture of Lululemon that had suffused them was that this store was more than just selling leggings. It was way more than just a retail job, that it actually was going to help them rise, not necessarily to a high level in the organization, because most of the organization was really in Vancouver, but achieve whatever they wanted to achieve, because not everybody in retail really wants to be there forever, right? Like to be a writer, to be an account supervisor at a TV channel, like all the different things that people were thinking they wanted to do. And I believe that has a lot to do, while I'm not blaming Lululemon, and I want to say a lot of the stuff we're talking about in Lululemon's culture has been moved mostly off screen because basically because the founder said, hey, I don't know what to say about these pants, but if they are like not great on people who are heavy, that's the women's problem. And it created a huge kerfuffle, said other very like foot in the mouth things, and they moved him out. So they've made some changes, still pretty hardcore culture, but not in exactly the ways we're talking about. I'm not blaming them for this murder for sure, but I'm just saying the way that these two women who were involved did have a lot to do, I believe, with their ideas of achievement that they were being steeped in at this company.
Yeah, certainly they're embodiments of it. And so at the very least, they're interesting characters. But just to be clear, Lululemon lawyers. Vanessa is not blaming you.
Not at all. Not even slightly.
I mean, it sounds like he could be back, though. Like foot and mouth, saying the wrong thing. It's so back right now.
So back, yeah.
So he should just get back out there with those kinds of comments. All right. So talking about how jarring this crime was, I think part of it, obviously, is you peel back these layers of the company and that culture. It's really fascinating. There's also just like the straight up, like where it took place. I remember seeing once on Twitter, this guy had this methodology for anytime he was going to a new city and he needed to figure out which part of it he wanted to stay in and how to pick a hotel. He would just literally figure out where the Lululemon store was and be like, that's probably the best part of town. Because he was like, they know how to pick the locations, right? So yeah. That's like part of their thing, right? They know the perfect storefront, the perfect little mall to be in, the perfect neighborhood. So part of that is just like a shocking where this took place, right?
Yeah, Bethesda. I mean, it's a super fancy suburb, right? Like, it was next door to an Apple store. And what's unbelievable is, like, the employees for the Apple store actually heard this murder happening, and they decided not to call the cops because it just did not compute that there was a possibility that a murder or even an assault or somebody getting beat up could be happening in Lululemon. To recap the story a little bit, the two women we mentioned before, they were closing down the store. At Lululemon, each employee checks the other's bag, no matter what you are in the hierarchy, to make sure you haven't shoplifted anything. And one of these women had shoplifted something, and she had done it before. And so the other woman said, I'll be dealing with this tomorrow. And the shoplifter left and then told the other woman, like, oh, hey, I need to come back because I forgot my subway card and my wallet and I can't get home. And she let her back in the store. And the next thing you know, the woman was dead. And in Bethesda, this was like one of those big 5 o'clock news style crimes, right? Like for a couple of weeks while the cops were still figuring it out, everybody was fearful. Like they thought it was another DC sniper. They were just like, what's happening? There's somebody on the loose in Bethesda who's like killing people.
Yeah, the initial facts, it's like it reads like a movie, right? It's like there's one woman's dead, the other one's badly injured and they were assaulted, and it's like a crime spree. There's the makings of, right? And obviously it's revealed in the podcast. For those who haven't listened, it's definitely worth checking out. But it's spoiler alert, but it's revealed that just what you laid out. In the end of the day, it's fairly straightforward, right? It basically amounts to a pretty troubled employee with a pattern of theft, murdering her colleague to avoid being found out. That's really sad. It's really dark. But ultimately, that's fairly straightforward to understand. But the way you told it in the podcast, I was like on the edge of my seat. I'm like, what the hell's going on here? And I wasn't sure where it was going at all. And so I was just curious, like, as far as you understand it, for investigators, when they came upon this, were they also like completely confused and they had to like peel back all these clues? Or were they like, oh, this seems pretty obvious to us. Now it's just a matter of proving that this person did it. Like, how twisty and weird was it, like in real time versus how you
No, it
can
was
tell it
definitely
now.
twisty and weird. It was definitely twisty and weird. It wasn't the kind of thing where they knew immediately. And actually, what happened, which is often what happens with something like this, because 90% of the time, the answer is just her disgruntled ex-boyfriend or current boyfriend did this. It's like most women are just killed by the romantic partner. That's the answer. But when it didn't look like it was that, they did have on tape two guys who were like dishwashers someplace else in the mall walking right nearby. They did have like enough stuff where they were like, okay, this looks like this is really happening. But additionally, in the actual police department, there was a lot of angst and anxiety over, are we going to actually accuse a woman of this? Are we going to actually accuse the woman who was a Division I athlete and had a scholarship at a college in Connecticut, like the aspirational American woman? Are we going to actually say that she did it? We have to be 1,000% sure, because we'll have egg on our face. Like, we'll be so embarrassed, plus probably sued by her. And also, they were involved with her family. Can you imagine being the detective going and talking to this family about your daughter being victimized because she'd set it up to look like she had also been assaulted, and then saying, look, not only did she actually kill this woman, but she set it all up and she's led us all on this crazy goose chase. So I do think all of that happened. In terms of the actual evidence, I think when they realized that like there were shoe prints that just never left the store, they were like, well, the person who did it has to still be in the store. Like, it has to be one of these two bodies lying on the ground. But I would say that the law enforcement of Bethesda is it was a win, right? Not only did they figure it out, but she went to prison for first-degree murder, life in prison. So, if you want to say they got the right person and she was punished in the way our legal system can punish somebody, then it happened. We requested the police files from the DA's office, and they sent us. It was so much stuff, it had to be on a thumb drive. And generally, if police feel that they didn't comport themselves correctly, they will really fight giving you that stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say they come off well in the story because they didn't rush to judgment. I mean, a lot of our podcasts, there is an investigator, law enforcement type figure that a lot of times we're picking at because it's some sort of wrongful conviction story, or even just the nature of telling these. You want the plot and you want the twist. And so sometimes you need to be like, but they had the wrong person for a while, right? In this one, there seemed to be a patience and then honestly a sadness. Like that, I don't know if that's just a really good investigator and a really good interrogator who knew how to get what he needed, but he sounded legitimately bummed out to have to be doing this and sad about the way things had gone. He seemed like he had a certain amount of compassion even for the killer. So I think they come off really well. They seem like total pros. And
Yeah,
I was curious, like, so that's how you
absolutely.
got that tape? They just willingly gave it to you?
Yeah, we got that tape. Actually, Lane, who works at Campside, her sister lives nearby. So basically, we said, hey, yes, we want it. Send it to us. Can you overnight it? And they said, no, we can just put it in the mail. And we were like, okay, fine. And then day after day, it just didn't come. And then they were like, oh, it just got returned for like the wrong address. And we're like, oh, we're out of time. So we sent Lane's sister over to grab it.
Amazing. That goes on the resume.
There's so much more in those tapes. It's very sad, and particularly when we get to the part where Brittany's brother thinks he's helping her get out of this murder charge, and he comes into the interrogation room and says, they're not taping us. I don't see anything. And of course this is all on tape. You're in an interrogation room, but he's just trying to help his sister, and it ends up hurting her more.
You just hit at something interesting, which was there was a lot more. And one thing we don't get into a whole lot on these behind the scenes interviews is the length of each podcast. And that's mainly because your classic limited series narrative podcast is 6 to 8 episodes. That's just what it has to be. There's not that much room for deviation. In this case, it was an arc on your infamous series. And so it became 4. Did you find that was the perfect length to keep it really tight and keep the like true crime mystery at the forefront? Do you wish you had 8 episodes? You could have built a whole world around the culture and then walked the characters into that world. Like, what's the perfect length of this one?
Yeah, we talked about it and we were like, should we try to do more of the analysis of Lululemon in the front or throughout as we're like unpacking the true crime mystery? And definitely, I think that could have made it 6 episodes easily, but we just didn't really have the time to do something of that like complexity. It's tough when you have like a ticking clock mystery and then you're also trying to get in cultural analysis. I mean, this is something that like TV shows are made for, but it's way harder when you're just a voice trying to put people in a world to then pull them continually in and out and be like, by the way, Lululemon, is twice the market cap of H&M, and let's tell you about this weird consciousness raising seminar. It can create great tension at times, but I also think people can drift.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned the potential for like some sort of a scripted adaptation for all A-list writers, producers, actors listening. This is the part you really want to tune into. But, the sort of longer version would have been almost like Enlightened meets Big Little Lies, a show that's really incisive about a specific type of culture, but that has a true crime hook and a way in. One thing about those kinds of shows I've found is that when you tackle an insular culture like that, it could be like Super Pumped about Uber or any of these. It usually has, I guess you could say, a mean streak to it. There's like a satirization or a blistering takedown kind of element. And it's rare that you're just like, look how cool this company is and look how successful. Like I mentioned Air earlier, and that's one example. But usually you're taking these things down a peg or 10. Do you feel like this particular culture should be taken down a peg or 10? Or where do you stand on that?
I think that Lululemon has changed in a lot of ways, and I think a lot of this came directly from the founder and the visionary of it. So for me, it's almost a little bit of the time capsule from the 2010s, which is also when this type of association with this kind of athleisure brand really started. I don't so much feel that it's a real takedown as I do that it's a bit like spiders in a web. A lot of people got great stuff from working there. This was not like some sort of abusive environment, but it suffused their lives and was memorable. Like the number of people who called us and said, I want to talk about my time at Lululemon. I have a lot of thoughts about it. A couple of them were angry, but more they were just like, you can't believe that I went through this. I was like 24. I was new to Boston. I just got this job just because I thought like I should have a job. We interviewed somebody in the last episode who's like, I'm like sitting in a Starbucks and this manager who I now realize has one weekend of management classes like asking me how I feel about like my mom's death and how I'm processing the grief. What is happening? Like, how is this part of like my job selling pants? And then I go back and I'm just like opening boxes, like putting things on mannequins. I am really drawn to ensemble stories about groups of people and the subcultures that they're in. And I just think that the grand experience of many women today who are upwardly mobile, who are living in cities, who are maybe not even getting married, who are dating sporadically is like who you work with and your friendships through that company and the meaning you find in that work. I like stuff that like acknowledges that weird experience of being alone in a city and trying to better yourself.
Well, listen, you can call it professional curiosity, objectivity, storytelling. Sounds to me like those consciousness raising seminars you went to changed your life. I think you're a devotee.
Yes, you're right.
You betrayed your real heart here.
I think about it all the time.
I'm glad you did because it was really enjoyable and I think it was incisive. And regardless of which leads, is it the examination of a culture? Is it the true crime element? A lot of times you need both to justify pointing the camera or the microphone at something. And I think we all learned a lot from this one and it was really well done. So thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Such a pleasure.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks so much to Vanessa, Natalie, and the rest of the infamous team. And thank you for listening to Inside the Tent. If you haven't already, don't forget to go to joincampside.com to become a free member of the Campside community. That's joincampside.com.